I'm like, whoa, what is that? So I started hearing black music, blues, rhythm and blues, and rock and roll. And me and my buddies were like, whoever created this music can't be anything but wonderful. So that's why I'm here. I love the music. It was some of the best music I ever heard. But let's go way back to where these sounds come from. We all know a major scale, maybe? Well, there's flatted thirds and sevenths, which the blues players found, and they concentrated on them. So you just flat. And that's how you get that blues sound. Not that sound. Anyway, we go back to the days of slavery, and let's talk about spirituals just a little bit. It starts out in the fields, enslaved persons just expressing sorrow for the hardships of bondage, and also joy for hopefully redemption at some time and a way to get out. And there were the sad songs like Sometimes I Feel Like a Motherless Child, and the joyful songs, Rock My Soul in the Bosom of Abraham. And the Fifth Jubilee Singers, of course, they brought a lot of these spirituals around the world. 1873, they went on a tour, and they raised almost $50,000 and saved Fisk from going under. So that's how powerful music was. Queen Victoria really loved them and had a painting commissioned for them. So in honor of them, let's see if I can pay tribute a little bit to that. The gospel songs that came later, I'm going to let Graham talk about Lucy Campbell.
Lucy Campbell, I've spent a lot of time in Memphis, and she's one of my particular heroes I like to talk about. She was on the ground floor. She promoted gospel music. Gospel was actually a new form that was coming out, and her idea was that she, at the turn of the century, since it was one of the most segregated times in U.S. history, she believed that people need to hear uplifting music in church and things like that to get them through hard times. She wrote several gospel standards, many of which rock and rollers like Johnny Cash and Elvis Presley sang. And I'm going to get Mike to play one of her hits for you.
Yeah, this is a song called Heavenly Sunshine, and the verse is, when our hearts are caught in sorrow and it seems all help is gone, Jesus whispers, do not falter, I will leave you not alone. Then somehow I leave my trials, how it is I cannot see. Still I hear a voice from heaven gently say, follow me. And here is the chorus. There is sunshine when we're when we pray. There is sunshine in our sorrow when our hearts are filled with pain. Oh, there is sunshine when we are burdened. There is sunshine when we pray. There is sunshine, heavenly sunshine, blessed sunshine to guide our way.
Now, Miss Campbell was also up here in Nashville. She was instrumental at the National Baptist Convention USA, Inc. She wrote over 100 gospel hymns, and she discovered singers some of you may have heard of, Robert J. Bradley, and also Marion Anderson. She discovered them when they were young and really helped promote their careers as well. So she was instrumental and was on the ground floor of African American gospel music, which had its golden age in the 1940s. And guess what? A lot of people heard it.
Check, 1, 2. And then as the century rolled along, gospel kind of got a little bluesy. So as long as the words were from the Bible or about the Bible, you were okay. I'm going to try something here. Good idea. They gave me the trick chord. Thanks. Check. All right. So I'll just try to do a little example of that. This was thought of as a Negro spiritual, but was actually written by a white man, but it's been played in black and white churches. This little light of mine, I'm gonna let it shine. This little light of mine, I'm gonna let it shine. This little light of mine, I'm gonna let it shine. Let it shine, let it shine, let it shine. Everywhere I go, I'm gonna let it shine. Everywhere I go, I'm gonna let it shine. Everywhere I go, I'm gonna let it shine. Let it shine, let it shine, let it shine. Let it shine, let it shine, let it shine, shine. Thank you very much. I had a senior piano moment there. Oh. So then, let's talk about ragtime a little bit. Ragtime comes along the late 1800s, and African-American piano players are creating these wonderful pieces, pretty much a syncopated right hand with a steady left hand. And people like Scott Joplin would use blue notes, but they'd be more like passing tones. There's that blue note. So then W.C. Handy in Memphis, he comes up there with his band. They're schooled musicians. And 1912, he writes the first published blues, Memphis Blues. But what really inspired him, he was in Tutwiler, Mississippi, 1903, around there, waiting for a train, and he heard a blues singer sliding a knife on the guitar strings, and it made the most eerie sound he ever heard. He never forgot it. So he tried putting a 12-bar blues in this ragtime format, which was 16-bar music, 16 measures. And the Memphis Blues tried to mimic that, and at the time, it really sounded more like ragtime. Memphis Blues, the blues section went like this. And the people loved it. And all of a sudden, all this published music, blues songs start coming out. Now, 2 years later, he creates the most popular blues song of the century, St. Louis Blues. And let's get along to Bessie Smith here. One more. There she is. The reason I talk about the blues so much, Tennessee claims the father of the blues, W.C. Handy, the empress of the blues, Bessie Smith, and the king of the blues, B.B. King. So how can you not talk about the blues in Tennessee? Anyway, this song was written for Bessie. I'm going to sing it, so try to use your imagination. I hate to see that evening sun go down. I hate to see that evening sun go down. 'Cause my loving baby, he's done left this town. I'm feeling tomorrow like I feel today. Feel tomorrow like I feel today. I'll pack my trunk and make my getaway. St. Louis woman with the diamond rings pulls that man around by her apron string. If it wasn't for diamonds and her store-bought hair, that man of mine wouldn't go nowhere, nowhere. I got the St. Louis blues, just as blue as I can be. That man's got a heart like a rock cast in the sea, or else he wouldn't gone so far from me.
Yeah.
All righty. So then, just to put it in perspective, he writes that song in 1914, still collecting $25,000 a year royalties in the 1950s. That's how what a great businessman W.C. was. And in 1924, a guy named George Gershwin writes Rhapsody in Blue. And he would a lot of times listen to the black performers to get these ideas. And after it's a big success, he brings blues and jazz into the concert hall. He sends a copy of the score with the inscription, "To Mr. Handy, whose early blues songs are the forefathers of this work." So he's giving credit to Handy for bringing that to Rhapsody in Blue. So let's talk about B.B. King. Here's a song he recorded. He's brought blues all over the world. He's such an ambassador for blues music. And they started to speed the blues up and make what we call rhythm and blues. And there's a song he recorded called Sweet Home Chicago. It's kind of a migration song. You want to talk about that just a little bit?
The Great Migration. To put black music in perspective, it's really hard to pigeonhole these genres per se. Genre is something that was created by record labels and such to sell records. There is a lot of overlap, and you've got railroads that are connecting cities. You've got the Mississippi River ships passing up and down that. And then you've got the Great Migration going on, and African Americans and whites alike from the South are seeking jobs in northern cities. So guess what? The music's going to follow them.
All right. Now sing along if you want. Come on, baby, don't you wanna go? Hey, baby, don't you wanna go to that city of dreams, sweet home Chicago? 1 and 1 is 2, and 2 and 2 is 4. I got my bags packed and I'm heading for the door. Come on, baby, don't you wanna go to that city of dreams, the sweet home Chicago? Take it, Mikey. Thank you very much.
Now, of course, there's more to blues music in Memphis than B.B. King. We all know that. There were country blues performers that preceded him. There were also, they were doing all kinds of music in Memphis. This is just a person that we've got an image of up here. This is Joe Dobbins, who played barrel house piano.
And I just do one chorus of this. Boogie Woogie, W.C. Handy heard it all over around 1910, and I think that's one of the real sources of rock and roll, way before the electric guitar.
Now, we're about ready to have our special guest talk, but I do want to say a lot of people in here probably know about STAX Records, and so guess what? Because they were so well known, we're not going to speak about them today. We are going to turn our attention to Nashville. Nashville's Jefferson Street scene had they had a vibrant music culture and scene for at least 30 years, probably longer than that. At least this is what we know of. Yeah. So I would like to turn this over to our special guest, Mr. Lorenzo Washington, who was a young person on Jefferson Street who witnessed a lot of these musicians playing. This exhibit has been called I Have a Voice, and we are going to hear Mr. Lorenzo Washington's voice today. Welcome aboard, sir. All right.
Thank you, Mike.
The first question,
Graham.
I would like to say we can open the floor for questions for Mr. Washington. I am going to lead a first question. Tell us about the vibrant music scene that you grew up in as a young man. What was Jefferson Street like?
Well, Jefferson Street, not like Broad Street is now, but Jefferson Street was one exciting street. I started going to Jefferson Street with a friend of mine, Herbert Hunter, at about 17 years old. And Herbert was an artist, a songwriter, and he wasn't a musician. He played the piano a little bit. But Herbert got a hit record, and Herbert bought this brand new 1961 Ford Galaxy convertible. Now, when Herbert was in the studio or doing something in the office or something, it gave me a chance to sport Jefferson Street in that new convertible car. And back then, that was some deal, to be riding Jefferson Street like that. And matter of fact, my daughter came in just a minute ago. We're going to talk more about Jefferson, but my daughter came in, and my first wife was on Jefferson Street, walking down Jefferson Street. She and 3 other young ladies, her sister and 2 of her friends. And I'm strolling Jefferson Street, not in the Ford, but in my car. And so back in the day, they used to thumb down Jefferson Street, just hitchhike from Tennessee State to Fisk, down to the clubs that they want to go to. But back then, you know, Jefferson Street was so alive with nightclubs and the young ladies, and you had a chance to choose who you wanted to pick up. It was just that many. And I chose these 4 young ladies to give a ride down to the Del Morocco Club where Jimi Hendrix was. But if Jimi Hendrix wasn't performing with a big crowd, you go to the next club. But anyway, I came back up Jefferson Street, and I went to Tennessee State, came back up Jefferson. These same 4 young ladies is hiking back up Jefferson. So at that point, I gave them a ride back up Jefferson, and some way or another, I got my first wife's phone number. And from that night, I've got this beautiful daughter back here. Yes. So, but that's a piece of my story of Jefferson Street. But Jefferson was such a lively street. Now, at one time, Jefferson was an affluent neighborhood street where professionals from the colleges, Fisk, Meharry, and Tennessee State, lived on Jefferson. And some of them partied in these clubs, clubs like the Del Morocco, the Club Baron. The Club Baron was Little Richard's home. The Club Baron was Jimi Hendrix's home for a while. Jimi Hendrix and Johnny Jones had a big guitar battle in the Club Del Morocco. And Johnny Jones won the battle because Jimi Hendrix came in with a little amp about that tall, and Johnny Jones came in with an amp like this and just blew Jimi Hendrix out of the water. So, but you had the Club Stillaway, where we would go into Club Stillaway, and the Club Stillaway is lit up. Now, the streets wasn't as lit as the clubs. You go into clubs, and the walls in the clubs would be just vibrating, and the lights, you know, shaking and wiggling a little bit from all this great music. And that's where Ike and Tina Turner came and hung out at. James Brown hung out there sometimes. So you didn't know who you were going to see in these clubs at any given night. And it was just so much happening out there on Jefferson. And doing homecoming. Oh man, Tennessee State homecoming, it would take you 40 minutes to get from 3rd Avenue to Tennessee State. It was just that vibrant on that street. And over at the New Era Club, now the New Era Club off of Charlotte, but it's on this street that I designed, and hopefully I can pass out some of them as you leave, and it has all of the clubs on this street and people that played in those clubs, and you get a better view of what I'm saying. But the clubs, the other club that I really enjoyed going to was the Club Baron, and the Club Baron is where. Oh, you got it. Okay. Now, the Club Baron was a little sort of elite, you know. Some of the more elite went into the Club Baron, but that was a smart and cool place to go. Now, they've got a room where that first air conditioner is. That room is there from back in the day, from the 50s and 60s, and that room hadn't been bothered as far as renovating it or anything. But I'm trying to get them to name that room the Baron, and so I'm working on that now so that we will have some originality from the day.
I lost battery power, but that's okay. Well, tell us about your friend Marion James.
Oh, Miss Marion James. Now, Marion James was my inspiration to do what I'm doing with the museum, the Jefferson Street Sound Museum. Now, Marion and I used to, I joined her organization, and so we had a chance to talk a lot. And Marion was a fasty lady, I'm telling you. She was a little tough for some folk, but I don't know why we got to be such good friends. We got to be very good friends. And Marion James was one of the ladies that helped a lot of the artists that came to Jefferson Street. She was the person that would cook a big pot of stew during the week, so some of the artists could come through and have food. Back then, when they first come to town, they wasn't making a lot of money, but it was quite a few clubs that Marion James had connections in, and at that time, she could get a lot of musicians jobs when they came to town. And Marion James had a one-hit record. She only had one hit record. She had a lot of songs and a lot of records, but she had one hit one. That's My Man. And matter of fact, the piano that she wrote that song on, I have in my office right now on display. But Marion James influenced a lot of artists. They had a lot of respect for. She was, how can I say? She was such an impressive lady. Oh, and a great blues singer, yes, for sure. A great blues singer.
And she started off, didn't she start off singing on Jefferson Street in the 40s?
In the 40s, she
Right.
sure did, yeah. And was a member of a couple of organizations that was on Jefferson. And she was the queen of the blues in Nashville. The mayor gave her documentation saying that she was the queen of the blues. And I've got all of that in my museum. And you must come by and see what I've got. It's not a big museum, that's why I call it mini, but it has so much information. I've got a set of 29 kids coming Saturday at 2. I got a group of 27 kids coming at 11, and they said they're gonna bring me lunch too. I said, oh, y'all come on. Y'all come on.
So, Mr. Washington, I'd like to open the questions to some of the people in the crowd, and I guess Jeff's got a microphone over there. Does anybody have any questions for Mr. Washington?
Yeah, if you'll raise your hand, I'll come to you. You have a question?
When was he born?
What?
When was Mr. Washington born?
Oh, I was born in 1943, January 31st.
That's a good question to get us started off.
I'm sorry, maybe I missed it and you already have given the exact location of your museum. And let me also say thank you so much for doing this. We're enjoying the music, we're enjoying the history, just all three of you being here. But I would like to know the exact location of the Sound Museum.
Okay, and I do have a card.
Right next to Ooey Barbecue.
Well, one door up from Ooey, but it's directly across the street from the Citizens Bank, there near 21st. You'll see it's got pictures on the front of the building. I got a mural on the building of Johnny Jones, not Johnny Jones, Billy Cox and Jimi Hendrix is the mural. And you can take pictures in front of the mural also.
Have you met any of these singers you've talked about?
Yes, I have. I sure have. I met Jimi Hendrix back in the day. I went in the Del Morocco Club, and he was performing. And back then, it wasn't anything to walk up to one of the guys and shake their hand. They're glad for somebody to come in and shake their hands and acknowledge them.
If I can add to that, you knew DeFord Bailey Jr., and had the joy of playing with him, and I said, DeFord Bailey, you played with Jimi Hendrix. And he said, no, Jimi Hendrix played in my band. So, that was before Hendrix made it big. I just thought,
Yeah. And DeFord Bailey and I were really good friends. He had come over to the museum, and I had a dinner for him at the museum, and they didn't expect what I did. They thought I was going to come in there with paper plates and that kind of thing. I had all real silver plates and had somebody in the kitchen cooking a really nice dinner. So I surprised him and Jimi Hendrix, and I'm not Jimi Hendrix, Jimmy Church, and a couple of more, and Marion James.
Lorenzo.
Yay.
Hey, you called a few names, and you might want to speak to some history that for some of us that were born in the 50s. But
I got him.
yeah, but you called some names. You called Jimmy Church.
Uh-huh.
You haven't called Tyrone Smith's name yet, but tell us a little history about Jimmy and Tyrone, who are still performing now. And you also talked about DeFord Bailey, and I'd like for you to tell them who he really is and what his first was.
Mm-hmm. Now, DeFord Bailey was one of the great musicians. Now, DeFord Bailey, he's not senior, he's DeFord Bailey that was here in the 1920s, in that era. And DeFord Bailey was one of the first black performances on the Opry, the Grand Ole Opry, and he was one of the ones that helped name the Grand Ole Opry the Grand Ole Opry. So DeFord Bailey, and then DeFord Bailey Jr., who I knew very well. Very well. We were really good friends, Junior. And Jimmy Church. Jimmy Church, well, we just had a big function for him last week. We honored him, and he's one of the musicians that was around doing the Jimi Hendrix and the Otis Reddings, and during that time, Jimmy Church is still performing today. A great performer too. You wouldn't look at him as being the age that he is, the way he moved around on that stage, but he's one of the great performers that was here throughout my life of pottering and doing the things that I did on Jefferson Street, eating nice restaurants. It was just a really beautiful spot to have participated on in as far as Jefferson Street is concerned. Tyrone Smith is still, and the Jimmy Church also played for the Prince of England twice, once in Memphis and then once in England. They invited him to England, to the palace. Tyrone Smith, he played George Bush's daughter's wedding. So these guys has done some big things, and they've been noted by some pretty serious people. So we've got artists that has been around the world. Some of the most popular artists on records, in billboards, has come right up out of here in Nashville. A lot of the musicians came by way of Tennessee State. Tennessee State had the best and the baddest musicians to come out of period. Just anywhere you go, because they were taken by folk like B.B. King, took two artists, musicians out of Nashville, and they were still with him. Ray Charles, yeah. Ray Charles took a number of them out of here. Hank Crawford. Hank Crawford was taken out of Nashville by, I'll think of it in a second, it's age again. Yeah. So there was a number of great musicians and artists that came up out of Nashville. That's the gentleman over there.
And then I'll get you, and then you.
How would you describe Jimi Hendrix's style when you heard him on Jefferson Street? Because kind of like Mike in Buffalo, I first heard him on the radio in East Tennessee, and you know, he was so unique.
But he was like that here. That's why he actually got fired from a couple of bands, because you know, here in Nashville we dealt with a groove. Like Mike was saying, if you don't stay in that groove and in that pocket, in your pocket, then you're going to mess up the whole thing with the band. So he got fired from, I know 2 bands that he got fired from. But he was such a creative, he was so far ahead of his time. And, but he was a really creative guy.
Mr. Washington, I'm glad to hear about your museum, and I'm going to get by there. I've passed several times, and I just wanted to add to Jefferson Street. I'm with the CCC. These were the tree planters before World War II. And what we have done is I've connected the CCC with the J. Robert Bradley's name in granite on the coat of 3 stars, so is the CCC as well. And I had to start printing my articles on my clothes. I'm from Alabama. And I'm representing the old pure spirituals of the church. And we sing them on the telephone to the seniors who are sick and shut in. But I just wanted to let you know that I work with the estate of Sir J. Robert Bradley and Dr. Chris Jackson on Jefferson Street at the Pleasant Green Baptist Church. He is the executor of the estate. And I met some people here earlier from Canada and let them know that Dr. Bradley sang for the Queen in 1955. So I just wanted to share that, and I'm looking forward to coming back to your museum.
Thank you so much, and I'm looking forward to seeing you back over there and catch it, so we can catch up.
I think we have one more question from this young man who's had his hand up a while.
Who was your favorite singer that you talked about?
My favorite singer, I didn't mention him, but one of them was Ray Charles. One of them was B.B. King. And one of them made an appearance in Nashville a few times, but Marvin Gaye.
Wow. That's great. Okay. Well, we've got time for one more question, and I'm making my way back to you right now.
There's another one over there.
It's my understanding that only one of those clubs are still standing. Is that right?
Yes, only one.
Okay. Out of 20 or something.
Yeah, I've got a whole list of them here. There was
Yeah.
that many.
So that's pretty sad. Is there any effort to bring at least one of them back in some form, and how can we be part of that?
Okay. Now, the Del Morocco, which at one time was the, is now the Elks Lodge. That in that building, they've got one room upstairs, and hopefully this can be a stepping stone. That one room is where a lot of the artists and musicians played private gigs up there in that room, and the room still looks the same. So that's one spot. And then plus, now what I would like to see is a dinner club on Jefferson Street, where you can seat maybe 115, 20 people with a nice stage to where you can invite, you know, that kind of music back to Jefferson Street again, because it's not so much there. I'm going to try to do some things this summer and have some bands in the back of my building, I call it my backyard. And we're going to try to have some small concerts back there. I can get maybe 60, 70 people back there in the back. So I'm going to work on something like that while I still spread the word that we really need a dinner club on Jefferson. Thank you.
If I can just add one thing to Lorenzo's wonderful memories of Jefferson, we can't talk about this great music without talking about civil rights and the power of music. You talk about the Highland.
Yeah, in our exhibit that we've got going around, I Have a Voice. Lorenzo's voice is on there, but also Rip Patton's voice is on there, and he was a freedom rider, but he was also a jazz drummer. And so he talks a lot about music, and he had a very interesting story about civil rights and the power of music, how they actually were able to, how would you say?
Just galvanize their faith.
Yeah, galvanize their faith in the jails when they were down there, and they drove the prison people crazy, but that's beside the point. Jeff, go ahead.
We got one more question. Last one.
Hello, Lorenzo. Isn't it true that you've worked with Clifford Curry most recently? I know he's passed now, but you keep that music alive. You've got a recording studio and you've got a rehearsal studio at your museum, and tell us more about that.
Yes, in my building over there on Jefferson, I do have the museum that I'm really proud of. I'm proud that I was given that. God gave me that. I'm not a musician, I'm not a singer, I'm not any of that. And I end up representing a history, a legacy, and that was God-given. And then I was blessed with the building that I'm in, and I do have the museum and a recording studio that we have recorded a couple of songs or albums out of there so far. Hopefully that we'll do a lot more in there, in that room. And I've got a rehearsal hall in that room. And Marion James, boy, she loved that room. Clifford Curry rehearsed in that room. Jimmy Church has rehearsed in that room. Tyrone Smith has rehearsed in that room. So there's been a number of artists and musicians that has rehearsed out of that building, and I have gotten to be such good friends of Billy Cox. Billy Cox was the bass player for Jimi Hendrix, and we still have breakfast at Crystal, maybe once a week, you know. So I'm still connected to a lot of these artists and musicians, but Clifford Curry was one of my most favorite guys, musicians and artists. He just passed a year and a half ago or so. But I've seen quite a few of these guys and ladies leave here. But I've got a big chart on one of my walls that says that these are the fallen stars, you know, and they were all stars. So, but yes. And thank you for asking.
Are we wrapping up yet, Jeff?
Yeah.
Before I send it over to you, I just want to say, being a historian and everything, one of the things that has really jumped out at a lot of people was the impact that running I-40 through Jefferson Street did to really kind of tear apart that scene. So when you're around in your city and you're seeing things going on that look like that they might affect some cultural institutions, stand up for it.
All right. I told you they wouldn't disappoint. Well, first, I want to say thank you to our curators for putting this excellent exhibit together and helping spread that word across the state of Tennessee on that. But what a treasure it is to have Mr. Lorenzo Washington with us today, and the valuable work that you are doing. It takes local historians with passion that he has to preserve and protect that heritage out there. So get out there and support the Jefferson Street Sound Museum. Thank y'all so much for coming.